thank you for joining us on another episode of Eyes on Homestead. Today, our special guest is Julio Guzman. Thank you, Councilman, for joining us today.
You got
we
it, man.
appreciate you. And he's actually here today to talk to us a little bit about his vision and hopes for our city. As we are actually here presently located at Somerset Academy in Homestead. This is being presented by We Can All Race. And we also have the students running this operation in this great studio.
It's amazing.
Here.
It's amazing what I see here right now.
So we're excited to bring this segment to you today, and thank you for joining us. Julio, let the public know who you are from your perspective, and so they can understand what we're about to answer as we get through all these questions.
Well, Walter, thank you for hosting this forum. Thank you for the students of Somerset. I love this forum. It's a very safe space, and it's a place where we can just have a conversation about all things Homestead. So basically, my name is Julio Guzman, the current vice mayor of the city of Homestead, and I've been in Homestead for 43 years. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. I've got 4 brothers. I've got a sister and 3 brothers. I'm married to Emily Guzman, a beautiful wife, and I have 3 kids. I grew up here, obviously, and I've seen the changes that Homestead has gone throughout the years. But, you know, elementary, middle, high school at Homestead High, then the hurricane hit. You know, so I've gone through all of those changes. And when I started my real estate brokerage, because I'm a real estate broker, I started noticing that there was need for community involvement. So I started to get involved in civic organizations like Kiwanis. I'm in the Rotary Club. I got heavily involved in the Chamber of Commerce. And that's when COVID hit. You know, COVID was a really big part, and it played a drastic role in everybody's lives. And that was my turn to try to help businesses in Homestead. So I got involved in the city, and at one point, former Mayor Porter decided he wanted to run for Ag Commissioner. And there was a vacancy. There was a vacancy on the council, and I had spent a lot of time in the community, so I decided to, you know, give it a shot to get appointed to council. And by the grace of God, I was appointed, and that's when I got my foot in the door with politics. So basically, I'm a person that wants to create a better community for our kids. You know, I want to have a place where my family and all the residents of Homestead have everything they need and never have to envy any other city. And that's basically who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And now you're running for the mayoral seat.
Correct. I'm running for mayor now. I think Homestead needs a change in leadership, and I think I'm the right person to create that united vision so that we can start to get Homestead on the right track and have the progress that Homestead deserves.
Well, you said it. Speaking of track, this is a race-themed conversation, and we're going to kick it off talking about where we are now. We're in an amazing school in the city of Homestead, Somerset Academy. We have a lot of great schools. This is actually probably one of the closest schools to your city hall, with the exception of Miami-Dade County, right? School, Miami-Dade College. Youth programs, right? In the spirit of racing, pit stop per se, how would you ensure that the youth programs provide the necessary fuel for the next generation's success?
Well, youth programs are fundamental to any city, any successful city, and any family. You know, a family always wants to make sure that their kids, you know, have activities to do after school. Therefore, the objective of the adults is to, how do we create environments that kids are going to thrive? So obviously we want to make sure we have great schools, right? That's something that every city wants to have, because when you have great schools, you attract very good people, very successful people, and it just creates a more success for your city. So having youth sports at a high level, and what I mean at a high level is, let's make sure that we take pride in the facilities that we currently have, which I think it needs a lot of improvement. And I'll give you one example. You know, when Homestead High School plays football games, you know, the football coaches need to have some of their staff up on the roof so they can get a bird's eye view of what's happening on the field so that they can control and call plays, and they can have that, that remote conversation with their head coach. But our facility at Harris Field right now isn't ready to have people up there on the roof. Another example would be when there are commentators at the Homestead Rodeo. I don't know if you went to the last rodeo.
No, I didn't get to the last one, but I've been to them.
That box, that commentator box, I don't think has been changed since the inception of the rodeo. I mean, those are the type of things that need to be upgraded just so that we can start to pay attention. And then having regional tournaments is something that I am very, very adamant about, because I've been to regional tournaments when I was young playing sports. And why is it that Homestead youth always has to travel north? They always have to travel to Orlando, they got to travel to Tampa, Jacksonville. Why can't those kids come travel here? And what you'll hear is because our facilities aren't up to par. Our facilities aren't adequate enough to host those types of regional tournaments. And regional tournaments, they bring a lot of new eyeballs to the city of Homestead. They bring a lot of money. There's an economic engine behind regional tournaments that everyone in Homestead could benefit from. So I think establishing regional tournaments is one of the things we should do in all sports. It doesn't have to just be soccer, baseball, basketball. It can now be pickleball. Pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports. I don't know if you were at the pickleball tournament that we had recently.
No.
With top level pickleball. We had a pickleball tournament that it brought like 300 new people to Homestead. They had never been here before, and they were like, wow, this place is beautiful.
It is a sport that crosses all ages.
It's the fastest growing sport in the country right now, and I think that we should embrace pickleball because it, like you said, it goes across all ages. I was playing with a guy that was 80 years old. 80 years old, and there's kids that are 5 years old playing pickleball. So again, all sports we need to address so that we could create an environment for the youth to thrive. And again, you brought, we can all race to my attention, and you started telling me a little bit about, what it cost. That sport costs a ton of money for you to
racing.
For you to get your kids involved in racing. It might not be available for everybody. So we've got to figure out ways on how we can be inclusive to all youth, not only a select few.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And when it comes to modernization of our city, there's a lot of steps that the council has already taken into doing that. But it's important as we look forward towards our city in the future, 10, 20 years. But just like a car gets its own modern upgrades,
right,
while still retaining its classic essence, how do you envision modernizing Homestead while not sacrificing its historical charm?
Well, that's the term that you'll hear a lot. Homestead's got this great historic charm, which I've seen it and I'm living through it. Modernizing that historic charm needs to be addressed in a certain way. And for example, you and I both know we come from the business environment. Success leaves clues, right? So there are other cities that have been extremely successful at modernizing whatever iconic stability that they have. Anything that they have that's iconic to that city, they have figured out a way to modernize. And I'll give you a really good example of Miami Beach. Miami Beach has the iconic Art Deco. And whenever you look at a postcard or something, you're always going to see the Colony Hotel. You're going to see those blue, red. You're going to see that Art Deco. So I think Homestead has an ability to do something similar, because in Miami Beach, you'll see how they maintain the historical facade, but right behind it, there could be this really new, exciting building that, somehow meshes and comes together with the facade. So I think, for example, in our historic downtown, there's a way that we can modernize that while we maintain its historic facade. And that's when you bring the right planners, you bring the right architects, and you put design guidelines along with the Historic Preservation Board, and you implement that into our code so that we can modernize what we have, yet not lose that historic charm. So again, With the Historic Preservation Board, going back to success leaves keys, success leaves clues, I would have that Historic Preservation Board talk to other historic preservation boards that have been successful in maintaining that charm about their city. And let's collaborate, because I think that's the essence of success. Collaboration is going to give you the right tools to success. And there are a lot of other cities that are willing to collaborate with Homestead, especially the League of Cities. Are you familiar with League of Cities?
I've heard of it, but not familiar intimately.
League of Cities is an organization that basically has, elected officials from all throughout the state of Florida. And what they do is they get together and they just talk about best practices in their city, and they talk about legislation coming from the state. And I think Homestead needs to have representation on the League of Cities. We haven't had representation there in a while, other than, John Burgess was the last one who was on the League of Cities. I think he was the president of the League of Cities for a while. We need to get back in the League of Cities and have that direct connection with the League of Cities.
Now, Julio, racing requires a team effort, even though it's an individual driver. But how would you drive collaborations between the city council and local community organizations, like you mentioned, the Chamber, Kiwanis,
Right.
The Rotary Club, the Military Affairs Committee? How would you drive that?
Well, I'd first give them a voice, I'd make them feel that they have a part to play in the decision-making process of our city. For example, if you're wanting to, would truly help, giving us some information that will help catapult Homestead to that next level. In addition to that, just like your iPhone, when you use an iPhone, everything connects. Everything is very simple, everything is very easy, everything is transparent. It's like a big ecosystem. So I think Homestead needs to, they need to have technology that connects, and it makes the residents feel that all the information that they could be looking for is easily accessible, whether it's through our website. If you wanted to go on our website and search for youth sports, boom, you could find all the youth sports with all the contact information. I also think if a person is having, let's say they're having a depression problem, mental illness is a big hot topic right now, then they could find all of the agencies that we've got that assist with mental illness. Or if there was people in the community that needed economic assistance, rental assistance, whatever that is, there should be a very easy way to find that information. And I also think that it's imperative that we start to establish a senior database. A senior database is imperative because I have an elderly mom and she lives on her own, but her kids are the ones taking care of it. But there could be residents in Homestead that, maybe their spouse has passed and maybe their kids are taking care of them at the moment. But what happens if the kids move away or some other dynamic happens in their family? We should have a database that's interactive, that even the kids can come in and update it and say, hey, by the way, my mom is no longer cooking, she's no longer driving, she's having a hard time taking her garbage can out, it's getting a little dangerous. The city needs to know that so that we can properly address.
Send somebody by.
Those are the kinds of things. So we need connectivity so that the city can start to progress.
Just as a racer needs to understand their vehicle's mechanics, how would you, Julio, equip residents with the financial tools that they need to secure their economic future?
Financial tools is a big plus when a city has the financial literacy. So we could partner with, the local college universities to establish financial literacy workshop courses. In this country, credit is everything, Credit is the main proponent when you are looking to finance anything. So when people understand how to, better their credit, that's a good first step. And there's a lot of steps you can take to immediately increase your credit. Number two is understanding, what is the path to home ownership? What is the true path to home ownership? Because I think when you have homeowners, there's a higher sense of pride. There's a higher sense of pride in where you live. So I think partnering with, let's say, Miami-Dade College or, University of Miami, FIU, and making sure that we connect to say, we want to make the Homestead residents smarter financially. And I think that's going to, exponentially shoot out throughout most of the residents, that they can take these free courses and also empower kids, empower the youth. I think there's something really special that happens when older guys like you and I, when we connect with the younger millennials, when we give them our wisdom and they give us their ideas, there's something really special that comes out of that. And I think when we feel as adults that we can always learn from our peers or from someone else, a lot of really good things are going to happen. So I think that's one of the ways that we can address financial literacy in Homestead.
Which spills over kind of into my next question, which is every racer needs a garage. How will you ensure housing in Homestead is both affordable and of champion quality?
So yeah, the affordability problem is the crisis going on throughout the entire state of Florida, right? So there's got to be a way that we could somehow reduce the price points of these homes. But that's a tough question to answer because we've got so much migration coming into the state of Florida from all parts of the country. And we also have people coming from South America. And it becomes a supply and demand issue. So if there is little inventory, then the prices are going to remain high. So we need to start to adapt alternative housing methods. There could be modular, there could be, and there's an array of different different home designs that do pass the Florida Building Code that people can have. Now, we want to make sure that they conform to the aesthetics of our city. We don't want some new sort of small box, become your neighbor and it degrades the value of your home. There are ways, and I've seen, there's a company out there called Steel Homes. I've been over to their factory, to their warehouse in Doral, and they build homes in a warehouse that drastically reduces the price of the property. And when I asked them, I said, do you guys have any of these homes in Homestead? And they gave me an address. I drove by the house and I said, man, I could never have identified that house was steel. And all they do is, they replace,
per se?
Yeah, they replaced the concrete for steel. And that home back in 2019 sold for $300,000. So those are the types of things that we can address. And also including the financial literacy, giving them the path to homeownership, giving them resources from the state, the county, that's going to help people with their down payment. That's going to help allow for affordability. And also, I do think that, and I know we'll get to a development question soon, but
yeah, it's next.
I do think that we need to address transit-oriented, sustainable, smart development, and that's what I consider downtown development. I want our downtown to thrive, and in order for that to happen, I think mixed use in downtown is exactly what'll start that engine as per se. Now there's all this talk out there about, Julio's the overdevelopment guy, Julio's the one causing all these traffic issues, and that's simply not the case. When we look at it from a lens of always thinking how can we enhance, the amenities, how can we enhance, the community aspect and create more affordability, that is one of the solutions that I think will revitalize our downtown, and that will start that engine in the right direction. And I think that is what needs to happen. So that's one of the things that drastically, sets me apart from my opponents.
When considering the balance between speed and safety in racing, where do you stand on city expansion versus preservation?
Yeah, like I said, expanding and having smart development is one of the things I need to make sure that everybody understands correctly. And also, we have to address the fact that, South Dade has about 50% of the population. Homestead has about 25% of that population. Yet we only have 12% of the jobs, right? So when you attract jobs, that is going to also create a way that more people will no longer have to drive up north to other places of Miami for employment. It'll create a better quality of life for them. They don't have to spend 4 hours in their cars. So jobs is the number one factor on my platform. When we create jobs, everything else is going to fall into place. Now, how do we attract jobs? We don't have an airport. We don't have a seaport. We don't have a beach. Yet, I think that's part of the reason that we're never in the conversation when, large employers want to expand their business or relocate. So we have to somehow insert ourselves into that conversation. And the way we insert ourselves into that conversation is by incentivizing these businesses. And one of the ways that I think we could incentivize these businesses to expand is, why don't we abate their property taxes until they stabilize? The land acquisition and construction costs are the same here and all throughout the county. Land cost might considerably be a little bit less here in Homestead. Therefore, if we can have people start looking at land to expand their business, and then we give them a property tax rent abatement for a year, 2 years until they stabilize, the indirect economic growth that Homestead will have will be amazing. People will start to spend more money here. They're no longer going to have to spend money on gas and tolls to drive up north. They're going to have more time to spend with their family and go to restaurants and go to other entertainment that we have in Homestead. So I think jobs is the way that Homestead is going to continue to thrive.
Class A enterprises.
And we do have two of the big Class A developers that have already come down to Homestead in terms of warehouse development in the commercial sector, which is amazing. The Easton Group, they've already established and have some property out in the Park of Commerce. And
for storage, right?
And this is Class A warehouse storage. Things that you would see typically in Doral are now starting to come to Homestead. But that's they're large warehouse. The Berkowitz Group, and they're typically retail guys, but now they're getting into the warehouse space also near the Park of Commerce. But we still need to continue to attract more smaller warehouses so that the population here, the guy that wants to establish, his little cabinet store, he wants to do kitchen cabinets or any of the trades that the people want to do, they could have those smaller warehouses here, and that's going to create a lot of economic empowerment here in Homestead.
A smooth track ensures a safe race. How do you propose to address the infrastructure bumps that our city faces?
Yeah, we have an infrastructure problem. We got bumps is a very minor
understatement.
Very minor way of saying it. So, I think for a long time, with all of the development that happened, 2001 to where we are today, which, by the way, my opponent was on council back then. So now he's saying, we have to address these problems when he was part of the council that created them. So here we are now. So yeah, traffic is an issue. Our electric utility is an issue. Our water and sewer needs to be addressed. So all of these things need to be addressed. Traffic, number one. Traffic, there are other cities that have had similar issues that we've had, Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay. Yet they've worked with the TPO and they have found ways to fund, multimodal transit comprehensive master plans, right? They have found a way to do it. Our mayor sits on the TPO, and yet we still haven't created that, transit master plan. So I think we need to make sure that we have someone there on the TPO that is pounding away to say, let's figure out a way to get a master plan. And I know that traffic signalization will definitely help as well. And I know there's a program out there, and we've got the cameras up already. And I think what's happening is they haven't really turned them on. But I also think we ought to consider finding a way, if if we could somehow take control of our own roads, if we could take control of our own roads, then we would be in control of our own destiny. And I'm not exactly sure how we could have the county give us our roads, if there's got to be some sort of interlocal agreement between the two. But if we take control of our own roads, I think a lot of great things can happen, and we can get things done a lot faster. We just got to make sure that the funding is going to remain the same, because every time a developer, does something, they pay a road impact fee. So we want to make sure if we could control the road impact fee, I think that would definitely help how we manage our roads. And by the way, whenever the county does have people doing things on the road, they pick the worst times to do that work. It could be rush hour, and that's when they've got the road closed. When, if we were in control, we would say, hey, listen, midnight to 6 a.m. is when work is going to be done on these roads. So I think traffic
It mostly
signalization
happens during the morning.
Yeah. So I think signalization is a big key. I also think that we ought to put a little more pressure, or we should have put a little more pressure on the developers, that had developed prior to widen the roads. Just have a bird's eye view of how this is going to impact the city. Now, when recent developers came and they wanted to do certain things and they wanted to show us a traffic study, I said, we can't look at a traffic study in a paper document, because nobody understands that. We need to visually see how this is going to impact whatever intersection that development is on. And once I demanded for that developer to do that, that's exactly what they provided, and it gave us a much clearer picture of how that was going to flow, how that traffic was going to flow, and what the impact was going to be. And that helps whoever's sitting on council have a much better idea if they want to support or do not want to support. So I think, signalization, taking control of our roads. I also think that the electric utility, I think we need more linemen. Definitely need more linemen, because they don't have enough. There aren't enough linemen working with the city right now. And we ought to create an apprenticeship program. We should start attracting more linemen to come to Homestead, but we have to have competitive wages. So the wages need to go up to attract more linemen, and we've got to get our electric utility infrastructure in place, because we generate very little power, and we're always going to be dependent on other utilities, FPL, Duke Energy. So I think if the city starts to think like a business and the electric utility starts to generate power, and I've proffered, a solar farm, I'm not saying to, have this solar farm take over the entire grid, but at least if we start thinking in renewable and sustainable energy, we can create a 25 megawatt solar farm that will give us a step in the right direction, so that we can start to generate our own power. And that could be another revenue stream that could potentially lower the electric cost of our residents. And just the same way we have purchase power agreements with all of these other electric utilities, we can establish the solar farm and start paying that down along with all of the incentives that we get from the federal government. And then we could start to utilize the power being generated. Either we can sell that back to whoever wants to buy it from us the same way we buy from them, and those revenues we could use to lower the electric costs of the residents.
Like regulating the number of cars on a track, where do you stand on the building limits residential moratorium?
Okay. Residential moratorium, I would support, because the development that has been allowed in the past, it's gotten here. And whenever you talk to commercial developers, because I think we need to, really focus on the commercial aspect of Homestead. Whenever you talk to commercial developers, they will always tell you they need rooftops. Rooftops are where the consumers are. So when you have commerce and you start to attract commercial development, they need to feel reassured that those rooftops are there. So residential moratorium, I could understand. However, in my plan, wanting to have a mixed-use development in downtown, I still think that should move forward, because we are not going to have a thriving downtown unless we create a mixed-use project there. Therefore, that is the balance that I think it needs. If it's smart development in specific locations, I think that's what's going to continue to move Homestead forward. And just think, other cities are doing better than we are when it comes to, their density. You look at, Doral used to be farmland on the west side that nobody thought would ever go there. I mean, they have turned into an economic powerhouse, and they have the same growth issues that we have, just like Cutler Bay, just like, Palmetto Bay. And these cities are thriving. So if we want to, allow these other cities to become, the capital city of South Dade, then stick with the status quo. But if we continue to embrace smart downtown mixed use and we focus on attracting commercial development, I think that's moving Homestead in the right direction.
Out there on the tracks, racers aim for titles, wins. You mentioned a couple other of competing cities. How would you steer Homestead's image to be a champion city on the regional and the national circuits?
Well, first, I think it's getting the right leadership. That's number one, so that we could start to have better relationships with not only the county, the state, and that way, that collaboration between those entities will start to bring us more dollars so that we can do better projects. Number two is Homestead needs to promote itself better. Homestead needs to, Homestead needs to advertise that we are the premier city of South Dade. Again, we're in between two national parks. We're the gateway to the Keys, But if a very good example would be Biscayne National Park has some of the best diving, underwater diving in the country. Yet when you ask people if they can, who do they know better, John Pennekamp or Biscayne National Park? They would always say John Pennekamp, right? So I think if Homestead starts to think like a business and starts to, put together, these advertisements that we want to attract commercial development and we want to be that city that's going to attract tourists, I think that's what Homestead needs to do. So Homestead needs to not only, establish collaborations with county, state, and federal, but it also needs to, make sure that it is being looked upon as a thriving city.
You brought up Biscayne National Park, and even racing is evolving with eco-friendly innovations. How would you ensure Homestead's development aligns with environmental conservation?
Yeah, Homestead development should start to, promote green initiatives. They should start to promote solar panels or any type of renewable energy. All of Homestead development should have some part of that in play, and there should be incentives for that. I also think that anywhere that you could have, we should start to embrace chargers, chargers for electric vehicles. We should start thinking of generating, like as a city, not as an individual resident, but as a city, we should start to generate renewable energy as well. And I go back to the solar farm. That's one step in the right direction. So I think embracing, sustainable, renewable energy is huge. And there are universities that have all sorts of case studies that are willing to help and to collaborate with us so that we can have a vision on how to address that. So buildings, we should have in our code, all new buildings need to adhere to green structures. It's going to cost the developer more. However, if you start to think about there is no other place to build, so the leverage, we've got the leverage now. So if you want to build in Homestead, you have to abide by these rules. And I think that's what's going to also get Homestead to progress and move in the right direction.
Julio, just as a racer needs the best facilities, what amenities do you feel that our city needs to ensure residents get a pole position in life?
So I think Homestead needs a great downtown. I don't know of any other really great city that doesn't have a great downtown. So number one, Homestead needs a great downtown that you'll see people walking, you'll see outdoor dining, and you'll start to see a lot of people utilize the park, Losner Park, and that amphitheater with some really cool concerts.
Journey. That's fun.
So, we also need more things for our kids to do. More things. For example, if you wanted to go have a party for your son or daughter that's between the ages of 5 and 10, and you wanted to go to urban air, you wanted to go have them jump on the trampoline, there is no facility like that in Homestead, yet they're thriving in other parts of the county.
Just to the north.
So I think we want to start to look at the areas that, what are we lacking? What do we need? What is working in other cities? And how do we start to attract that to Homestead? So everywhere I go, I typically want to speak to the manager. I'm like, hey, you interested in coming to Homestead? Because we really need something like this here. And they say, oh, where do you think we could do something like? I said, listen, let's get you set up with the city manager, with our CRA director. Let's have you talk to them and see how we can, help you bring this concept to Homestead. So I think we need more restaurants. I think we need, more community events. I also think we need to address, if we get the partners that we have, for example, the Tourism Advisory Committee, we start to utilize those ideas to bring them. And again, all this goes back to success leaves clues. There are other cities that are doing very well with bringing these amenities here. We just have to, almost like you copy paste, but you adapt it to the demographics and the character of Homestead. When my wife says, hey, you want to go to a date night? It's always the same restaurant. So you either have to drive down to the Keys or you have to go up to Kendall or Doral. I don't want to have to do that anymore. I want to have all of those amenities here. And I would love an iconic attraction, I do know that we are working on having the distillery here very soon, right next to City Hall. It's going to be a world-class distillery, but we can add more of those types of attractions to Homestead. If somebody wanted to bring, something huge, a water park or something that's going to allow City of Homestead residents not to have to travel out.
Mm. Yeah, that actually covers another one of the questions I was going to ask you about. Any other cultural activities that you'd like to highlight that you'd like to see more of?
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot more concerts, a lot more concerts. And, why can't we get the big concerts to come over to the racetrack? Big concerts, big Mark Anthony, big Garth Brooks, big, all these big guys that are doing great things in Miami and Broward County. We have facilities here to host them. So I think, again, that goes back to how do you get the eyes on Homestead? How do you market Homestead as a place that people want to come to? We are always driving somewhere else, but we need people to come here. Just like NASCAR. When NASCAR's here, we get thousands and thousands of people to come, but it's only, once a year. So I think those are some of the things that we have to do. And I think also we have to utilize our assets better. The assets that we have, I'll give you an example, the rodeo grounds. Rodeo grounds is a beautiful asset that we've got, but sometimes I feel like it's underutilized because there's only a few events that happen there throughout the year. But if it were available more times throughout the year, then that can become a revenue generator for the city. I don't know if you're getting to the revenue generation question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as diversification is key at a racer's portfolio, how do you propose to diversify the city's revenue streams?
There you go. So there's a very good example. We got to stop making bad deals. We got to stop making bad deals, and there are some historically bad deals that the city has made in the past. We have to, if you attract commercial business, that's going to be a revenue generator. And when you attract commercial business, it's going to attract the quality of housing that we want to see, bigger, estate housing when we're talking outside of downtown. So that's going to be a revenue generator. I also think that if the electric utility can establish in, starting to generate its own power, that could help offset some of the residents' power bills. So we want to make sure that the assets that we have can be leveraged to become revenue generators when you are providing a service to the residents. So there are ways, but I think the deals that we have in place with some people that we've given leases to for 50 years, that it kind of locks you up and it doesn't allow you to use that asset. So I think there are some creative ways that we could start to have multiple revenue streams throughout the city if we start to do better deals.
Even in an era where racing is digitally connected, how would you leverage technology to turbocharge not just our city services, but also our resident engagement?
There you go. So again, I would create that ecosystem that I was talking about earlier. Create the ecosystem where everything is connected. I would promote having fiber throughout the entire city. Having fiber connection would be huge for all the businesses in the city of Homestead. And I also think it needs to be a very user-friendly, mobile-friendly app where anything that a resident wants is readily available and easy to find from the services that the city of Homestead provides. So I went to Brazil, to Rio de Janeiro, back in 2013, and at that time, I was looking at a city that was interconnected on all levels. Traffic police, building, everything was connected. And sometimes I'm sitting in certain departments in City Hall, and it looks like they're working off of a DOS screen. It's a green screen, and I'm like, are we still using these outdated programs? So I think we need to start to embrace a little bit of change and start to upgrade some of the technology that the city is using. And I think that'll help us become a lot more efficient in what we do. So embracing technology, creating an ecosystem that's easy to use, it's gonna make the employee's job a lot easier to do. And also, we can collaborate with colleges and universities to say, hey, because there's a whole AI industry being created.
Or even high schools.
There's a whole AI industry being established, and AI is starting to make things a lot easier and a lot quicker. So we ought to have someone looking at, hey, these are all of our departments. Is there any way that AI can help address without getting rid of jobs, Is there any way AI can address some of these things to help Homestead become more efficient, and then bring those ideas back to our government?
That's great. Now, safety is paramount in racing. As our city continues to accelerate towards growth, how do you ensure the safety gear, proverbially, of our city is up to par?
Well, you need to make sure that people feel safe in their city. I think that's fundamental. Anybody that wants to move to Homestead is going to want to make sure that the city is safe. So we need to figure out a way to, get more police officers. We need to get more police officers on the street. Our city has grown, rapidly, yet the number of police officers hasn't kept up with the pace. So going back to the revenue streams, we create revenue streams that'll help us attract more police officers, and also create an academy for police officers to, go through that academy and graduate here, but create an environment where they're going to want to stay in the City of Homestead Police Department. So I think we need to enhance, we need to bring more police officers to the City of Homestead, but I don't want them to go through the academy, start at the City of Homestead, and all of a sudden want to go to the Dade County Public Schools, or they want to go to, Miami-Dade County. We want to make sure that the Homestead police officers stay here. So finding more money through different revenue streams so that we can, hire more police officers is paramount for the safety of our community.
Well, Julio, that's all the questions I have for you today. But this is a great opportunity for you to speak to the rest of Homestead who's watching on now. Before they go out to vote, is there anything that you want them to know or hear from you?
Well, again, passionate about the City of Homestead. I want to make sure that Homestead doesn't miss the opportunity that it has. We've got a very small window to make sure that we get the right leadership in place so that Homestead can become that premier city that we can all be proud of. We want to make sure that we create that environment where people don't have to, go drive to work. We want to make sure that we've got amenities here to take care of all your entertainment needs so that you never have to feel envious of any other city. So again, I humbly ask for your vote. The early voting starts the 28th, 29th, and the 30th, and the voting date is October 3rd. So please vote for Julio Guzman so that you can see Homestead move in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us today. Again, thank you Somerset Academy for hosting us, and Vice Mayor Julio. I apologize, I said Councilman earlier.
You call me Julio, man. Julio, that's it. It's all good.
Julio, huh? God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
Thanks for coming to talk with us.
Appreciate you, man.
Hope that you guys have been challenged.